Hey everybody, and welcome back to MoodTube. I'm your host, Paul Malamud. Week 5 was a great week for me. Not only did I go 4-1 with my picks, correctly predicting that 2 previously undefeated teams would lose, but I won my Bet Moody game against Pats fan Jamie Lagarce. Thanks to the Bengals winning in a defensive slugfest turned monsoon, I don't have to disgrace this set by putting a Tom Brady bobblehead doll on it until the Jets beat the Patriots next week. Speaking of the Jets, that was by far the best part of the weekend. I spent all weekend long juggling my opinions about the game. I respected the fact that the Falcons were a desperate team playing at home and that Matt Ryan had never lost back-to-back home games in his career. But Monday afternoon, I tweeted out my decision. I said I thought the Jets had a good chance of winning, and boy did they prove me right. The Jets looked great in prime time. Geno was close to perfect, recording 147.7 passer rating, and he joined Dan Marino as the only rookie quarterback to throw 3 touchdowns on Monday Night Football. I'll stop you before you even start to say it. I'm not comparing Geno to Dan Marino. I'm just stating a fact. Despite the Falcons scoring 28 points, I thought the defense played great. The D-line continued to make its case for being the top unit in the league. Sheldon Richardson added to his sack total, and Muhammad Wilkerson had his national coming out party. He recorded 2 tackles for losses to go along with his beautiful strip sack in the third quarter. These 2 are going to be dominating up front for years to come, and I think they're deserving of their own nickname. So, I figured it out. How about we call them the Terror Twins? There were, of course, some things that I saw that needs to be worked on. Most specifically, covering of tight ends. Tony Gonzalez showed us why he's the GOAT. He torched the gang green all night long. At times, the entire NFL had to have known the ball was going to him, and they couldn't stop him. But when it came down to it, on the goal line, they double bracketed him, and they wouldn't let him score the touchdown. They got a couple penalties, but they wouldn't let Tony Gonzalez beat him. With Heath Miller and presumably Gronk coming up the next 2 weeks, the Jets need to figure out their tight end covering issues. It's something that's been plaguing them for years. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make any bold predictions for the Jets season just yet, because it's still extremely early and at 3-2, and with their upcoming schedule, I can clearly see the possibility that they could go 0-4. I just don't think it's going to happen. However, after winning a game that nobody besides Coach Ditka, Keyshawn, and myself gave them a chance of winning, my excitement is more than justifiable. I'm going to end this Jets long rant with this. It's still way too early to predict how Geno's career will unfold. My entire life as a Jets fan, I've been looking for a true franchise quarterback. Now, I'm not going to say that Geno is going to be that guy, but Monday night I felt something that I very rarely felt as a Jets fan. During Atlanta's last drive, I never once got worried as signs continued to point to the fact that they were going to go down and score a touchdown. The entire drive, I had full faith that Geno would get the ball back with enough time to lead the Jets down the field to a win. And at this early stage of his career, that's the best sign of a franchise quarterback that I could hope for. As for the Falcons' struggles this season, I think their 4 losses are a direct result of the concerns that analysts expressed all offseason long. That they couldn't possibly continue to win close games at such a ridiculous rate. Last year they won 7, count them 7 regular season games by 1 score or less, with an 8th coming in the playoffs. This year, we're seeing the complete opposite. All 4 of their losses have been by 1 score or less, with most of them coming at the very end of the fourth quarter. This Falcons season seems to be punishment from the football gods for the season they had last year. Now, the last game I would like to bring up is the incredible shootout we saw between Peyton Manning and Tony Romo. Sunday afternoon, I quoted one of the most iconic movie speeches of all time, tweeting that Romo was staring Peyton Manning in the face and saying, "We will not go quietly into the night. We will not go down without a fight." Romo played one of the greatest games by a quarterback ever, recording over 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. But for all of our sakes, we're lucky he isn't the President of the United States of America, trying to prevent the annihilation of the human race at the hands of alien invaders. You can argue that it's unfair to place the blame solely on Romo's shoulders. If you score 48 points in an NFL game, you're going to win 95% of the time. But, unfortunately for Romo, he was facing the greatest quarterback on the face of the earth at this current moment. And the stage of the game when you make certain plays really does matter. And time again, the quarterback of America's team has come up short in that situation. He just can't come through in the clutch. Let's see if he can turn it around. Now, let me say something a little bit about America's team. As the real America's team. As you see, I've got these awesome gym shorts up right here behind me. They're currently being on sale for $35. They're awesome. They're comfortable, they're flexible, they're lightweight. Most importantly, they've got pockets, and they've got an awesome little design here of what I like to believe is an army man or a military man running up some sort of hill with an American flag. Now, these are being sold by a Navy SEAL family, and the profits go to benefit the American military. You might ask, why am I selling it if they're being sold by a military family? That's because the person I know who's been selling them just left off the boot camp. So if you're interested in buying them, you can contact me with your size and how many you want at moodsportstips@gmail.com, and I'll be in contact and see what we can do. Now, for this week's Ask Moody. The first question comes from Nick Koss. Why doesn't the NFL have cameras dedicated to the goal lines and sidelines for more conclusive evidence? Kind of like Hawkeye in tennis. Too many years of inconclusive evidence? Well, let's get some evidence then. Nick Koss. Well, Nick, thanks. That was a great question. I completely agree. I've been wondering this for years. It seems like every time there's a close call on a crucial fourth down where the refs make a bad spot, I say I don't understand why there's not some sort of camera or other technology on the first down marker. You'd imagine with the money that the NFL puts into producing these games that they'd have that technology by now. Too many times I've seen the crucial spot of the ball go the wrong way and lead to a team losing the game. Let's get it. As for the goal line, I mean, there's got to be some way to put like a laser technology or something right on the pylon that can tell you right when the ball crosses the goal line. I mean, there's got to be a way to do it. Figure it out, NFL. Our second question comes from Peter Gallo out of Manhasset, New York. Now, this isn't about the NFL, but considering it's baseball playoff season, I figured it's a question that was a great question, so here we go. Is there any way the MLB will get rid of this ridiculous one-game wild card? Baseball is supposed to be a game of patience, strategy, and persistence. In the past, people that said professional baseball players are fat and out-of-shape wannabe athletes. One could shake it off as an ignorant statement made by an ignorant and thoughtless man. But with the addition of the ALDS and NLDS, and now this very clearly profit-oriented, nonsensical one-game wildcard playoff, the season is becoming less grueling and meaningful. Do you think someone within Major League Baseball has the integrity, means, and will to stop this? And are the fans too impatient and greedy to make the move back? Well, Pete, it's a great question, and I think we all clearly know where you stand on this topic. Well, I disagree with you. First, I've got to say you're right. The reason why this came about has to be because of the profits. Major League Baseball knows that they can get a whole lot of viewers, that they can sell very expensive tickets for an exciting, sudden death, one game wins it all wild card showdown to get into the real playoffs. But I disagree with you about the fact that we should get rid of it. I think there's two reasons why I believe this. First, it prevents teams who could go on to win the division from slacking off at the end of the season because they know they'll have the wild card there. Because now there's no certainty that just because you get one of the wild cards that you're going to be in the real playoffs. You could by all means be the better team, but on any given night in baseball, an ace can come out and just shut the better team down, and then all of a sudden you're at home watching the rest of the playoffs go on when you should have been in the playoffs as a division winner. Secondly, in my eyes, the perfect example of why this wildcard system works is the game between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Reds. The Pirates are out of it now after being eliminated by the Cardinals in the NLDS, but the emotions that the Pirates got to feel after their long documented struggles of missing the playoffs, their fans and their team got to feel what it's like to win a playoff series without having done it. It was an exciting game with it was an exciting game, and they got to feel what it's like, and I think it's going to feed them to come back. I think baseball fans were winners, I think the teams were winners, and I think Major League Baseball were winners. So I have to disagree. I don't think we should get rid of it. Next question comes from my brother Luke Malamud, and he's wondering, is this Jets defensive line the best since the Sack Exchange of the 80s? Well, for those of you who don't know, the Sack Exchange was the Jets defensive line of the early 1980s. It's one of the best defensive lines in the history of the NFL. It was made up of Mark Gastineau, who we know held the NFL single-season sack record for 17 years until it was broken by Michael Strahan. But it was also Joe Klecko, Marty Lyons, and Abdul Salam. In 1981, they led the Jets to leading the league in sacks with 66, and in 82, they helped the Jets get to the AFC Conference Championship game. So now there's one defensive line that comes to mind that might be better than this year's Jets defensive line since the Sack Exchange, and that's the 2004 Jets led by John Abraham and Sean Ellis. That year, Ellis recorded 11.5 sacks to go along with John Abraham's 9, and they each recorded 4 tackles for loss. Now, compare that to this year's defensive line led by the Terror Twins. Big Mo already has 4 sacks through 5 games, and Sheldon has 2.5, and they each have 3 tackles for loss. Now, sacks are great and everything, and I love a defensive line that could get pressure on the quarterback, because in this day and age, that's what you need. You need a defensive line who can sack the quarterback and pressure him without the help of blitzes. And the Jets have that, and sacks is a true measure of that. But, and more importantly, I think what we need to look at is tackles for a loss, because you need your defensive line to stop the run. And tackles for loss tell you that they're getting into the backfield and they're making plays before the runner can even get started. So that to me is more indicative, because it's just as good as a sack, you lose yards, but it's more demoralizing, because you expect with when you're running the ball that you're at least going to get 3 yards. So if you can stop them for a negative loss, that's just demoralizing. So looking at the numbers, I've got to say that this Jets defensive line, led by the Terror Twins, is in fact the best since the Sack Exchange. Now for our last question. Is it true that Julio Jones injured his foot Monday night? And if so, what fantasy implications will that have for the rest of the season? Any timetable for the return? That question comes from Jack Rokicki out of Manhattan. Now, the Falcons announced last night that, that was a weak throw. The Falcons announced last night that Julio Jones is going to be out for the year. They placed him on injured reserve. In terms of fantasy, the receiver that comes to mind is Harry Douglas. He's been the number 3 for years, so he's going to step into that role as the number 2 receiver behind Roddy White. Behind him, things get very unquestionable. The Falcons' 3rd and 4th wide receivers are 2 complete unknowns. Kevin Cohn and Drew Davis, they have a combined 4 career receptions. Now, I read yesterday that the Falcons reportedly signed wide receiver Brian Robisky, who was a 2009 second-round draft pick by the Cleveland Browns, as well as being the son of Falcons assistant head coach and wide receivers coach Terry Robisky. So they're hoping that the father-son tandem can get things going. The ex-Brown and Lion has 43 career receptions, with his best season coming in 2010 when he recorded 29 catches for 310 yards and 3 TDs. That's just not going to cut it. It's possible that playing under his father will help boost his performance, but still, I think the Falcons should go out and bring in another veteran wide receiver to help them absorb the brunt of the loss. That's it for this week's Ask Moody. If you have any questions you want answered, make sure to send them in to moodsportstips@gmail.com. Again, that's moodsportstips@gmail.com. Now for this week's favorable fantasy matchups. As always, it's brought to you by GTS Clothing, a.k.a. Greater Than Sports. First, I'm going to talk about quarterback, and I like Matt Stafford this week against the Browns. Everything you look at suggests that Stafford should be in for another under par week. The Browns give up the 4th least points to quarterbacks, and without Megatron, the Lions' passing attack looked whack last week. But everything I've read points to the fact that Megatron is going to be playing this week, and I think Stafford is going to be looking his way early and often. The Browns have some good corners, but they aren't good enough to shut down the league's best receiver. The Lions' passing attack's a completely different story when Megatron's in the lineup, because that opens up for the other receivers, but also for Reggie Bush on the intermediate routes and the swing passes. So I like Stafford to have a big game against the Browns. Next, at running back, this isn't a matchup, but this is something that I think you should pay attention to. Andre Ellington, the running back for the Cardinals. Now, these past couple of weeks, last week he outgained starting running back Rashard Mendenhall on way fewer carries. I'm presuming that throughout the season he's gradually going to see more and more touches. But the one thing going against him is that his diminutive size could prevent him from ever being a true feature back. I think that he could be a running back that later in the season could make the difference between you winning and losing a playoff game. And also, if you're in a keeper league, he's a great keeper. Next, at receiver, I'm going Cecil Shorts. Facing the highest spread ever, the Jaguars are sure to go down big to the Broncos early. And they'll definitely going to be throwing the ball a lot trying to get back. The Broncos have given up the 3rd most points to receivers, and I'm going to presume that Shorts is going to produce big in garbage time. With the return of Justin Blackmon, that's going to take a lot of the pressure off Cecil Shorts, and I think that he's going to be a solid flex option, and at times, if you're risking it, if you need it, a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 option. But this week, I'm liking Cecil Shorts a lot. I think he's going to have probably about 80 yards and a touchdown. At tight end, I'm going with Greg Olsen versus the Vikings. Now, I must say this, before you start him, you've got to check to make sure that he is going to be playing because he is coming off an injury. But I think he's going to be in for a big week. The Vikings given up the most points to opposing tight ends, and I think Olsen can help exploit that. He's an experienced player, and I think Cam Newton's going to rely on him coming off a bad week for the Panthers. Now, this isn't a matchup, but it's something I want to warn you about. If you have Bilal Powell, the running back for the Jets, I would consider trying to trade him now. With Chris Ivory getting healthy and Mike Goodson coming back from suspension, he isn't going to keep putting up the same numbers that he has been. I love BP, but I still believe that when healthy, Chris Ivory is a better back. And Mike Goodson is too dynamic of a playmaker for the Jets not to give him touches. Powell will still get you between 50 and 70 total yards a week with the occasional touchdown, but he's not going to continue to put up the same numbers that he has been if Ivory and Goodson stay healthy. Sell high now. You're not going to regret it. Now, for this week's picks. First game I'm taking is the Lions giving up 2.5 over the Browns. Now, if you want, wait and see on this game before you bet it to see if Megatron's going to be playing, but I like it either way. I'm going all in on the Lions, especially playing against a Brandon Weeden-led team. Especially if Megatron is back, there's no way the Browns are going to be able to contain this Lions' potent passing offense when he's involved. Like I already said in fantasy matchups for Matt Stafford, when Megatron's playing, they can go deep to him. It opens up things for the other receivers, and especially it opens up Reggie Bush. I like the Lions this week, big time over the Browns, giving up 2.5 points. The next game I'm picking is the Jets giving up 2.5 over the Steelers. This is a dangerous game for the Jets. They're coming off a big emotional win Monday night, and they're playing against the 0-4 Steelers. And there's a chance that they could be caught looking ahead to next week's divisional matchup against the Patriots. But I don't think that's going to happen. First-year Jet Willie Colon has taken a big leadership role with this young team, and there's no way that he's going to let them overlook his former team, the Steelers, who he won a Super Bowl with. I'm betting that the Steelers are heading back to Pittsburgh at 0-5. I'm taking the Jets giving up 2.5. The third game I'm going with is the Seahawks giving up 13 points at home over the Titans. The Titans are still without Jake Locker, and the Seahawks are playing at home, coming off their first loss of the season. With the 12th man at their back, I think the Seahawks are going to win this one in a landslide. I'm taking the Seahawks by more than 2 touchdowns. The next game I'm going with is the Redskins getting 5.5 over the Cowboys. Now don't get me wrong, I think the Cowboys are going to win this game, but they're playing a divisional game on the road against a Redskins offense who is starting to put things together before their bye. I believe that coming off the extra week of rest, we're going to start to see the RG3 that we've been waiting for. I think it's going to be a close game, so I'm taking the Redskins getting 5.5 points at home. And the last game I'm betting is the Broncos giving up 26.5 points over the Jaguars. Now, I've seen some places where this is 28 points. It's a 28-point spread. I like that anyway. Either way, it's the highest spread that there's ever been, beating the previous record of 24 back when the Tampa Bay Bucks were an expansion team. I think that there actually is a small chance that the Jaguars have a backdoor cover with a large spread, but this was too fun of a game for me to ignore. I'm going to put my faith in pain. The Broncos average 36.4 more points than the Jags do. So, I'm going to play this one safe by the numbers. We just got to keep our fingers crossed that John Fox doesn't take Peyton Manning out at halftime. I'm taking the Broncos, giving up 26.5 at home over the Jags. Now, for this week's Bet Moody. As I previously pointed out, the Bengals' victory over the Pats led me back into the Bet Moody winner circle, where I am now 3-1. This week, I'm putting my faith behind the 49ers and betting against Tyler Kinnerup, a big-time Cardinals fan from Phoenix. I think that the 49ers are going to continue their current streak of dominance and win again at home. However, if they don't, I'll be singing the song I Love You Arizona by Rex Allen Jr. That's it for this week's MoodTube. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all next week. But in the meantime, don't forget to check out the tube, because you got to see Mood.